So, Prince William reportedly went completely silent when the high-resolution photographs finally hit his massive oak desk on that fateful morning. And if you know absolutely anything about how the inner workings of the palace actually operate on a daily basis, you understand that his icy, suffocating silence is always way louder and far more terrifying than any explosive shouting match could ever possibly be. The shocking story coming directly out of Windsor Castle right now involves 6 highly incriminating images, 1 extremely expensive gold-embossed invitation, 42 incredibly influential VIP names, and a tiny, strictly unauthorized royal crest sitting directly and brazenly above Laura Lopes's printed name. Laura Lopes, for anyone who might need the quick historical refresher, is Queen Camilla's civilian daughter from her first marriage, and apparently someone operating deeply within her personal orbit decided it was a brilliant idea to flagrantly defy a direct written order from the highest levels of the palace, literally slap a forbidden crown on a private invitation, and actively try to hijack the British monarchy's visual power and historical prestige for a supposedly casual family art reception. Now, before we get into the granular, jaw-dropping details of this unprecedented confrontation, if you genuinely enjoy royal deep dives and highly analytical behind-the-scenes breakdowns of institutional power struggles, hit that subscribe button to Palace Files right now so you absolutely do not miss the next massive update. Now, returning to the forbidden gold crown that sparked this entire institutional meltdown, to truly understand why this specific detail turned into such an uncontrollable panic inside the heavily guarded palace walls, we have to rewind the timeline exactly 36 hours before the explosive confrontation occurred. A highly confidential email went out shortly after 7 o'clock in the morning, and the administrative tone of the message was incredibly polite, almost painfully and carefully polite. But the underlying directive itself was absolutely not open to any sort of creative interpretation by the recipients. Laura Lopes had been meticulously planning a private art reception for weeks, and the palace administration laid down the absolute law regarding the logistical boundaries of the event, stating clearly that the reception could not, under any circumstances, take place inside the historic East Terrace rooms at Windsor Castle. Furthermore, the directive mandated that no royal insignia, crests, or official emblems could appear on any printed invitations, and absolutely no professional photographers or commercial corporate sponsors would be permitted on the royal grounds during the gathering. The strict instruction was entirely final, meaning it was not a gentle suggestion, it was not an opening offer open for further administrative discussion, it was just a final, non-negotiable royal command issued from the highest authority. Laura's private office officially received the stern email, and the highly secure palace servers immediately logged a digital read receipt confirming beyond any shadow of a doubt that the message had been opened and reviewed by her staff, but absolutely nobody from her team bothered to send a reply. That glaring lack of acknowledgement alone was a massive red flag, and a deep, simmering irritation started bubbling uncontrollably among the senior royal aides who monitor protocol compliance. But what happened next escalated that minor administrative irritation into a full-blown, heart-stopping constitutional crisis. About 24 hours after the email was ignored, 2 massive commercial delivery vans abruptly rolled up to a restricted service entrance at the heavily fortified Windsor Castle. They were heavily loaded, carrying professional lighting rigs, towering champagne walls, giant, incredibly expensive floral arrangements, and hundreds of high-end corporate gift bags. But they crucially also lacked the necessary, pre-approved visitor authorization paperwork required to breach the perimeter. However, the clipboard paperwork attached to these unannounced vans vaguely described the massive commercial cargo as a private family delivery specifically intended for the Queen, and that single, carefully weaponized phrase instantly changed all the standard operational rules for the guards on duty. The intimidated security staff immediately waved the first heavy vehicle right through the imposing iron gates, while the second driver was only stopped on a complete, absolute fluke because one of the heavy cardboard boxes shifted during the turn and split wide open on the gravel during transit. Inside that broken cardboard box were dozens of incredibly expensive, freshly printed invitations on thick cream cardstock featuring elegant raised lettering, thick painted gold edges, and resting directly and unmistakably above Laura Lopes's name was a gleaming royal crown, the very symbol she had been explicitly and formally banned from using just hours earlier. So that is exactly where the narrative gets incredibly weird and highly suspicious, because why would someone deliberately print incredibly expensive, highly customized invitations after already receiving a strict documented order explicitly prohibiting them from doing exactly that? That burning question landed squarely on Prince William's desk at exactly 17 minutes past 8 the following morning, but there was an even darker, far more manipulative detail hidden within the recovered evidence. The original, previously submitted design for this controversial invitation had already been officially approved by the palace weeks earlier, and that approved version was elegant, entirely private, and completely harmless, featuring absolutely no crown, no official palace wording, and no subtle suggestion that the British monarchy officially supported or endorsed the private event. The forbidden royal symbol had been added later, completely deliberately, and specifically after the formal warning email was sent by the palace administrators. Prince William stared intensely at the two vastly different versions placed side by side on his desk, and he immediately noticed 4 extra highly problematic words printed elegantly beneath Laura's name that read, "By gracious royal permission." There was just one massive, insurmountable problem with that printed claim. Absolutely no such permission existed anywhere in reality, not from Prince William himself, not from the powerful Lord Chamberlain's office, and certainly not from the King's own private secretary who handles such approvals. Yet 42 highly influential, extremely wealthy guests had been explicitly told otherwise, a guest list comprising billionaire patrons, elite gallery owners, prominent former government ministers, and people whose names command instant, unquestioning respect in high society. This was clearly no longer just a casual, harmless family gathering. It looked entirely official, fully endorsed, and completely backed by the power of the throne. Prince William did not hesitate. He immediately gave the absolute order to stop the unauthorized event in its tracks, and that decisive action should have been the final end of the entire ridiculous ordeal, but it absolutely wasn't. Laura Lopes was already physically inside the heavily guarded walls of Windsor Castle, having smoothly slipped in through a private, unmonitored family access point just before 9 o'clock in the morning, purposefully carrying a thick, mysterious blue folder tucked under her arm. She was flanked by 3 unknown individuals who were absolutely not listed on the highly restricted, pre-approved security access list for the day. A senior, highly experienced staff member bravely intercepted her in a restricted stone corridor and respectfully but firmly explained that the afternoon reception had been completely cancelled by the highest authorities. Laura didn't aggressively argue, she didn't shout in frustration, and she didn't cause a massive public scene. Instead, she calmly opened her blue folder, confidently pulled out a single, crisp sheet of official-looking paper, looked the nervous staff member directly in the eye, and coldly stated, "I have absolute authority to continue." The senior staff member rapidly read the contents of the paper, and his entire facial expression changed dramatically as he nervously stepped aside to let her pass. The frantic question of what exact authority she possessed raced through the sprawling corridors of Windsor Castle significantly faster than any official printed memo ever could. Within mere minutes, the phones of senior royal aides were frantically ringing off the hook as they desperately tried to determine exactly who had signed that mysterious piece of paper granting her access. Absolutely nobody immediately recognized the signature scrawled at the bottom, but the formally typed instruction resting just above the ink was crystal clear, reading, "Please provide Mrs. Lopes with all reasonable assistance." It strongly appeared to originate directly from the Queen's separate household, and absolutely not from the King's official administrative apparatus. To the general, observing public, that specific organizational distinction might seem entirely insignificant and petty, but deep inside the palace ecosystem, it is essentially a ticking constitutional time bomb. Queen Camilla absolutely has her own dedicated staff, her own charitable foundations, and her own independent daily schedule, but her household absolutely cannot, under any circumstances, override a direct, explicit instruction issued formally in the King's name, especially not inside a primary royal fortress like Windsor Castle. Prince William was absolutely furious at the blatant insubordination, and he immediately ordered that the controversial document be brought directly to his private office for forensic inspection, but the paper never actually arrived at his desk. Someone operating in the shadows had swiftly and quietly removed the document from Laura's blue folder before the castle security team could even manage to make a quick photocopy for the official records. So now, the escalating problem had multiplied exponentially. An explicit royal order wasn't just being flagrantly ignored, but hard physical evidence of insubordination had mysteriously and deliberately vanished from the premises. Prince William immediately stopped treating this entire fiasco as a simple family misunderstanding and officially went into full, uncompromising lockdown mode, forcefully demanding complete access logs, live security camera feeds, written, signed staff statements, and printed hard copies of absolutely every single email communication related to the event. Then he issued his most aggressive, uncompromising demand yet, explicitly ordering that absolutely nobody was to warn Queen Camilla about the escalating situation, but she inevitably found out anyway, because of course she did. By 10:30 in the morning, the Queen had completely scrapped her private morning schedule and was sitting in a heavily armored car speeding recklessly toward the gates of Windsor. Prince William was promptly informed by security that she urgently wanted a private family conversation to resolve the matter, but he instantly sent back a chillingly cold one-sentence reply stating that this was absolutely no longer a family matter. That brutal message reached Camilla's secure car before she even physically arrived at the towering castle gates, ensuring she arrived absolutely brimming with unrestrained rage, but crucially, she was not angry about the art reception being shut down. She was absolutely livid that the palace security staff had dared to formally interrogate her daughter in the corridors. "My daughter is absolutely not a criminal," Camilla reportedly snapped fiercely as soon as she aggressively entered the designated meeting room. Prince William's immediate response was completely icy and unyielding, stating that if that were true, then she should have absolutely no difficulty thoroughly explaining the sudden disappearance of the missing authorization document. Camilla stubbornly stood her ground, forcefully insisting that there was absolutely no hidden document and that the staff were exaggerating. Prince William remained entirely unfazed by her anger and slowly slid a formally signed security statement directly across the polished wooden table. A veteran, highly trusted staff member had clearly seen it. 2 separate assistants had openly discussed it. Laura had literally just used it to successfully bypass a restricted internal checkpoint, and now, highly conveniently, the paper was completely gone. Camilla read the detailed statement twice in silence before delivering a calculated line that instantly shifted Prince William's growing suspicion into absolute outright fury, saying, "Perhaps your staff is simply mistaken," deliberately emphasizing your staff, not palace staff, not the king's staff, but your staff. Prince William caught the dangerous distinction immediately, leaned intensely forward over the table, and firmly said, "These people serve the crown." Camilla boldly locked eyes with the future king and responded with 4 chillingly simple words. "For now, yes they do." That was absolutely all it took for the temperature in the sprawling room to drop drastically to freezing. This entire ordeal was clearly no longer just about fancy champagne glasses or a private, unauthorized art show. It had rapidly devolved into a vicious shadow war over exactly which authority would ultimately prevail in the next upcoming reign. Then, Prince William discovered something genuinely alarming hidden on Laura's confiscated guest list. A high-powered, elite property lawyer's name had been hastily added by hand in the margins. He immediately wondered why a specialized property lawyer would ever need to be present at a supposedly private, casual art reception, so he circled the handwritten name in red ink and urgently requested a quick, comprehensive background check from his intelligence team. Within exactly 20 minutes, the revealing results were placed squarely on his desk, showing that the lawyer specifically focused on establishing private trusts, managing charitable foundations, and quietly selling high-value historical collections, a revelation that instantly made the art on display infinitely more important than the actual guest list. Prince William purposefully entered the East Terrace room just as the terrified workers were hastily taking down the elaborate display walls. Laura Lopes was standing nervously near the grand fireplace, speaking quietly with a panicked event organizer, and on a long table resting directly behind her were 12 beautifully framed, highly valuable artworks. They were undeniably beautiful and culturally valuable, but they were absolutely not listed on the official, pre-approved event inventory list. Prince William meticulously checked each small display label attached to the frames. 11 of the paintings clearly belonged to wealthy private lenders, but the 12th painting had absolutely no lender's name attached, bearing just 3 simple words, "Private Royal Collection." That specific label absolutely should not have been there under any circumstances because the royal collection is incredibly vast, but it is absolutely not a personal, private collection to be passed around. You absolutely cannot simply borrow a priceless historical masterpiece for a casual evening networking event. These irreplaceable items are carefully logged in massive ledgers, handled exclusively with white gloves, insured for tens of millions of pounds, and only ever move with extremely tight, coordinated security protocols. This particular highly valuable painting wasn't even formally authorized for movement from the archives, so the burning question was, how exactly did it get smuggled into the castle? Laura defensively claimed she didn't know anything about the logistics, while the frantic organizer claimed it arrived completely hidden among the official, sealed deliveries designated for the Queen, but the Queen's household vehemently denied ever sending it. Those were 3 wildly conflicting answers, and absolutely none of them added up to a coherent truth. Prince William then sharply noticed a tiny, discreet paper tag attached to the back of the ornate, gilded frame, and it absolutely wasn't a standard museum archival tag. It was a highly specific commercial valuation tag. Someone operating in the shadows was not just passively showing this historic painting, they were actively figuring out its exact black market commercial value. At that precise moment, Prince William completely lost his calm, but instead of shouting uncontrollably, he acted with absolute ruthless decisiveness, ordering the security team to have every single door to the room immediately locked. He commanded that absolutely no one could leave the room, use their mobile phones, move any files, or discard any stray papers until they definitively determined who truly and legally owned the painting in question. Laura looked completely stunned by the aggressive lockdown and protested, saying, "You cannot keep people trapped here at a private family event." Prince William coldly surveyed the chaotic room and sharply replied that this entirely stopped being a family event the exact second someone decided to put the forbidden crown on the printed invitation. Then Laura desperately played her final, most dangerous card, staring defiantly at Prince William and boldly claiming that the disputed painting no longer legally belonged to the official royal collection, insisting that it had been given entirely privately to her mother as a personal gift. Prince William intensely asked who exactly gave the priceless masterpiece to her mother, and Laura paused, and that tiny, terrifying hesitation told him the exact answer before she even spoke the words: King Charles. The entire heavy power dynamic in the locked room shifted instantly and violently, because if King Charles had genuinely and legally gifted a priceless, historically significant painting to Queen Camilla, then Laura actually had every legal right to display it publicly. If he hadn't, however, someone was maliciously exploiting the vulnerable king's name to brazenly hijack millions of pounds in restricted royal property. There was only one way to uncover the absolute truth. Charles needed to be brought into the room immediately. Camilla was suddenly desperate to avoid his direct involvement, frantically arguing that the king already had enough stress to deal with and attempting to dismiss the priceless picture as a trivial, unimportant detail. She aggressively accused Prince William of deliberately turning a simple, harmless family courtesy into a major, unprecedented constitutional crisis just to assert his dominance. Prince William completely ignored her frantic protests and immediately dispatched a highly secure private digital message requesting Charles's immediate, unquestionable presence in the room. Then something truly bizarre and highly suspicious happened. Camilla suddenly fell completely silent, shooting a panicked, terrified glance directly at Laura, who slowly and nervously turned her head toward the discarded blue folder resting on a nearby chair, the exact same blue folder that had previously held the missing authorization document. Prince William sharply noticed their silent, panicked exchange, and he didn't ask for permission to intervene. He simply walked over, grabbed the blue folder, and aggressively dumped its entire contents across the large wooden table. Guest biographies, catering invoices, seating plans, and expensive insurance documents spilled out chaotically, but there was still no sign of the missing authorization paper. Then, a heavy, thickly folded document unexpectedly slipped out from a hidden, concealed inner lining of the folder. And it absolutely wasn't the single sheet the security staff member had read earlier. It was something far more substantial, a sprawling, highly detailed draft proposal. The bold, undeniable title printed across the top of the pages read, "The Queen's Family Cultural Initiative." Read those shocking words again. This was absolutely not about one small, isolated exhibition or merely borrowing a single room in Windsor Castle for an evening. It was an entire, massive initiative, as the detailed proposal outlined a massive, recurring, highly lucrative program of private cultural events to be hosted exclusively at prestigious royal residences, deeply involving Camilla's relatives, selected corporate sponsors, and highly influential billionaire patrons. Laura's Windsor reception was explicitly and undeniably listed in the document as the official grand launch of the entire operation, the very launch that palace security mistakenly thought was merely a harmless family art show, the launch that had been formally and legally ordered to stop, and yet it aggressively continued anyway. Now, Prince William completely understood the true, sinister purpose of the tiny gold crown on the invitation. It wasn't just decorative flair, it was calculated, strategic corporate branding. Someone was meticulously and quietly building an unofficial, highly lucrative royal operation existing entirely parallel to the official one, creating a second, hidden door into the heart of the monarchy. This shadow operation would completely bypass Prince William's authority and become practically impossible to shut down once powerful billionaires and highly influential politicians became emotionally and financially invested in the scheme. King Charles arrived in the room shortly after midday with absolutely no fanfare or announcement, walking in looking exhausted and carrying a battered, iconic red dispatch box. He took one brief look at the scattered, chaotic documents on the table, then glanced sharply at the historic masterpiece leaning against the wall, and his expression instantly fell as he recognized the painting immediately. When Prince William directly asked whether he had legally and formally gifted it to Queen Camilla, Charles answered with one single, devastatingly quiet word: no. Laura whipped her head toward her mother in absolute shock, but Camilla remained stone silent, her jaw clenched tight in defiance. Charles firmly insisted on seeing the commercial valuation label and sharply asked who had physically moved the picture from the archives, but the room fell completely silent. He then slowly opened his red dispatch box and revealed a signed, highly confidential legal instruction dated exactly 3 weeks earlier, stating that the painting, along with several other highly valuable royal assets, was to be permanently placed in a secure family trust. The only legally named beneficiaries of this specific ironclad trust were Prince William's 3 young children, George, Charlotte, and Louis. This was exactly why the specialized property lawyer was secretly on the guest list. This was why the commercial valuation tag was secretly attached to the frame, and this was exactly why the unauthorized event needed to happen immediately, before the complex trust documents were fully finalized and legally binding. If the picture appeared publicly under Camilla's direct control, even for just one single night, it could change the entire legal trajectory of the asset. Photos and testimonies from wealthy, influential guests could strongly support the legal argument that Camilla already treated the painting as her own personal property, which wouldn't definitively prove ownership, but it would absolutely create doubt. Enough reasonable doubt for aggressive lawyers to ruthlessly exploit and subsequently delay the execution of the trust for years. Prince William turned fiercely to Laura and demanded, "Did you know about this?" Laura nervously stammered that she was explicitly told the artwork legally belonged to her mother, but when he pressed her fiercely for the exact source of that information, she looked down at the floor and absolutely wouldn't answer. Charles didn't need her to speak. He slowly turned his head to look directly at his wife, and the room fell completely, suffocatingly silent. In a highly surprising and desperate twist, Camilla fiercely denied any secret, orchestrated transfer of massive wealth, standing firm and loudly claiming that Charles had explicitly promised her the picture years ago in absolute private, without any lawyers present. Charles stared blankly at her, looking as if he were desperately trying to remember a casual, passing conversation that had suddenly, inexplicably become a massive, high-stakes legal issue. Then Camilla confidently reached into her designer bag and pulled out an old, slightly yellowed piece of personalized paper written entirely in Charles's distinct handwriting. It was fundamentally a simple, affectionate birthday message, but at the very bottom he had carelessly written one incredibly damaging, highly specific sentence. "One day the little landscape will be yours." There it undeniably was, a written promise existing in ink, but was it actually a legally binding gift? That single, careless sentence sparked a fierce, incredibly tense debate in the room, with Camilla strongly believing it meant absolute legal ownership, while Charles desperately thought it was just a harmless sign of deep affection, and Laura completely believed the matter was legally and permanently settled. Prince William, however, saw the harsh, undeniable truth of the situation. A casual, affectionate promise was being actively and maliciously used to steal a highly valuable, historic asset directly from a secure trust meant exclusively for his own children. The entire narrative immediately shifted as the situation abruptly became a high-stakes legal battle to determine whether Charles's fleeting, emotional words could legitimately override his formal, legally binding estate documents. Charles slowly took the delicate, aging note from Camilla's trembling hand and placed it deliberately next to the official, heavily stamped trust instruction, before calling the elite property lawyer over to officially weigh in on the dispute. The lawyer's professional answer was harsh, unambiguous, and entirely clear. The handwritten birthday message showed good intentions but changed absolutely nothing legally, whereas the formally signed trust document absolutely did. The painting legally belonged in a trust, and the unauthorized event had absolutely no right to publicly showcase it as Camilla's personal property. But Prince William was absolutely not done. He still fiercely wanted to know exactly who had printed the fake authorization document after the event was officially canceled, and he insisted they immediately find the missing piece of paper. Charles quietly ordered the extensive search, and palace staff rigorously searched every single room, checked every printer log, and desperately restored deleted emails. At exactly 46 minutes past 2 in the afternoon, a frightened, trembling aide discovered the definitive source. The fake authorization came directly from Camilla's private office, but Camilla actually hadn't signed it, and neither had Laura. The unauthorized signature undeniably belonged to one of Camilla's most trusted senior advisors, and Prince William immediately ordered her to come into the room. She walked in highly confidently, carrying absolutely no notes, and didn't flinch once as she brazenly confessed to drafting the proposal, deliberately using the royal symbol on the invitations, and explicitly instructing the delivery vans to use the Queen's secure designation to bypass security. Her bold explanation left absolutely everyone in the room completely speechless, even Camilla, as the advisor proudly claimed her rogue actions were meant entirely to protect Camilla, stating she believed Prince William's household was deliberately creating a division between the official royals and Camilla's family. She stated she was scared about the future and saw Laura's initiative as a brilliant way to secure a permanent, untouchable place for Camilla's family in high society before Prince William ultimately became king, wanting not titles or public money, but untouchable access, deep influence, and a highly respected, permanent position within the royal system. She genuinely thought she was fiercely defending her queen, but she had ruthlessly used Laura as a sacrificial pawn, resulting in the ultimate, devastating betrayal. Laura didn't maliciously set out to steal royal property. She was heavily manipulated, explicitly told the event was approved, given a document signed by a highly trusted senior figure, and assured the artwork legally belonged to her mother. When the first cancellation email arrived, Laura tragically chose to ignore it, choosing not to verify anything because the false, glittering reality she was presented with was exactly what she desperately wanted to believe. Prince William was not furious because Laura was Camilla's daughter. He was absolutely enraged because her name had been weaponized to bypass royal security, secretly move priceless historical items, forcefully silence staff, and deliberately turn personal, private wishes into unassailable royal commands. Charles immediately dismissed the rogue advisor on the spot, utterly shredded the fancy gold invitations, officially canceled the event, and ensured the artwork was heavily secured and instantly returned to a highly guarded vault. Camilla, feeling deeply and publicly humiliated, fiercely demanded a formal public apology for how aggressively Laura had been treated, but Prince William flatly and coldly refused. Charles desperately tried to calm the escalating situation, but his intervention only made the tension infinitely worse, leading Camilla to point fiercely at Prince William and accuse him of deliberately humiliating her family just to forcefully assert his absolute dominance before he even officially became king. Prince William remained entirely calm and coldly replied that he was forced to aggressively protect the throne solely because Charles had completely and utterly failed to set necessary basic boundaries. Absolutely no one spoke after that devastating remark, the silence falling heavy and suffocating in the room, as even Prince William seemed momentarily shocked by the brutal honesty of what he had just said, while Charles closed his eyes, visibly feeling the crushing weight of the accurate accusation. Below all the shouting, chaos, and anger, Prince William was entirely right. Charles had spent years desperately trying to peacefully merge two very different, conflicting families, wanting harmony but never making it clear exactly where personal affection ended and hard royal authority began. Now, one vague, poorly considered birthday promise had nearly pulled his young grandchildren into a vicious property conflict. One overzealous rogue advisor had acted wildly without proper authority, and one daughter had flagrantly ignored a high-level security order simply because she believed private family access was vastly more important than strict palace rules, meaning Charles wanted peace, but he ultimately created an environment of absolute chaos instead. The final, truly devastating blow didn't actually happen until long after Laura Lopes had been escorted completely off the castle grounds, when Prince William quietly picked up the confiscated guest list once again. There were 42 names listed, 41 were formally invited to the reception, but one specific name, the property lawyer, was added by hand at the very last minute, and as Prince William stared intensely at the ink, he realized the handwriting wasn't Laura's, it wasn't Camilla's, and it definitely wasn't from the fired advisor. Charles looked down at the piece of paper and recognized the distinct handwriting right away, as he had personally added that name himself weeks earlier, long before the cancellation email, before anyone secretly changed the invitations, and before anyone claimed they knew absolutely nothing about the elaborate plan. Prince William slowly looked up at Charles, and the crushing feeling of ultimate betrayal was thick and heavy in the air, causing Charles to sink deeply into his chair, realizing the king had known about the reception plan from the very beginning, even suggesting legal advice to Camilla. But when the proposal became too controversial, he cowardly backed away, letting the palace staff shut it down without ever admitting his own complicity. Charles never directly told anyone to take the painting, but by cowardly staying silent, he allowed others to dangerously assume what he wanted and aggressively act on it, leaving Camilla feeling betrayed by her husband, Laura feeling falsely empowered by the palace, and Prince William feeling the crown itself was under severe threat, all reacting to a massive leadership gap that Charles actively refused to fill. Prince William didn't shout. He simply picked up the annotated guest list, walked over to Charles, placed it gently in front of him, and said, "You could have stopped this." Charles didn't defend himself or deny the accusation. He simply looked at the empty space on the wall where the painting had hung just hours earlier, saw the torn gold invitations resting in the bin, and finally reached into his jacket for a heavy fountain pen. He slowly pulled the proposal toward him and drew a thick, heavy black line directly through the ambitious words, "The Queen's Family Cultural Initiative," his hand shaking slightly as he wrote a new, unbreakable rule for the royal family in the margins. No private family member acts with royal authority. He signed his regal name with absolute finality, and Camilla silently read the devastating sentence. Laura's name wasn't explicitly written there, but absolutely everyone in the room knew it was meant permanently for her. Prince William quietly gathered his remaining papers, turned around and walked purposefully out the heavy wooden doors, while behind him Charles sat completely alone at the large table, surrounded by a careless birthday note that promised far too much, a security order that came far too late, and the torn remnants of a gold invitation that absolutely never should have existed. Powerful historic signatures surrounded the isolated king, yet he sat completely trapped in the devastating wreckage of the clear, authoritative words he never actually had the courage to say. So, tell me this. Did Prince William act decisively to protect the British monarchy from a serious internal threat, or did he ruthlessly take advantage of a messy family problem to forcefully keep Camilla's family out of the palace for good?